Beginner's guide to the types of words in a language. Is my microphone? There we go. Perfect. All right. So not going to waste your time. As a beginner language learner, it's super easy to get overwhelmed by the different types of words in a language because there's a lot of different types and they're all used in different ways. And yeah, I get that it can be kind of overwhelming. So basically, by the end of this video, you'll understand the different word types and how to use them effectively. So if you do like this kind of educational content, guys, definitely hit the subscribe button, but I'm not going to waste your time. Let's go. So how many different types of words are there in languages? It's debatable. In my opinion, 9. I guess some of them are like you could kind of split into subcategories and some people will consider them their own categories. But anyway, you don't care about that. You care about what they are and how they work. So of the 9 word types, I've split them into 3 categories so you can kind of decide what you want to learn now. So the way I want you to watch this video basically is don't watch it like you need to like watch the whole thing and then never watch it again. This video is basically like just a guide for you to revisit if you need an explanation for the word type you're learning. So if you're a complete beginner, I'd recommend you only try and learn the important word types, this first category here. Don't try and learn everything, it's too much. If you already do kind of know, but you're a little bit foggy, you can come back and revisit this video and rewatch parts of this video. I'll try and put some timestamps in the description to basically brush over the words. But yeah, if you are more advanced, feel free to watch the advanced word types as well. But yeah, you definitely don't need those as a beginner. So I'm literally just going to explain how each word types works. I'm going to give you a couple examples at the end where I'm going to break the sentence down to show you. And yeah, that's how it's going to go. So first of all, the important word types, nouns, pronouns, and verbs. You've probably heard of a lot of these word types before, but if you haven't, that's completely okay. I'm going to explain what they are. So by far, not by far, it's my opinion, but I think nouns are the most important type of word. So a noun is either a thing, a person, a place, a concept. It can be anything like that. I'll give you some examples because I think that's the best way to learn. So for example, book, shoe, water, pasta, they're all things. Examples of people would be the king, Jack would be a person's name, and then mum would be referring to a specific person. You could also say boy, girl, those are people as well. Examples of places are the city, Australia, New York, and examples of concepts are freedom, sleep, hunger. You'll notice that some of these nouns have a capital letter and some of them don't. The reason for that is because some nouns are what's called proper nouns, which means they refer to either a person's name or a place that has a name. So if it's a specific person's name or a place with a name, it generally has a capital letter. So obviously Australia and New York, one's a country, one's a city, they have a capital letter. Jack is a person's name. Obviously you always capitalize a person's name. Depending on the country, some countries I don't think capitalize mum. I'm Australian, so we spell it M-U-M. Sorry about that if you're American or whatever and you're thinking I've spelt it wrong. But yeah, we capitalize mum and dad in Australia, and then the king, I'm pretty sure, would be capitalized as well. Maybe not the, but yeah. And then every other kind of word doesn't have a capital letter. Every other kind of noun doesn't have a capital letter. So as you can see, nouns are literally just like things. They don't have to be physical. They can be concepts like freedom, sleep, hunger, things that you can't actually touch. But yeah, pronouns are kind of like nouns. They have the word noun in the name. What pronouns are actually substitutions for nouns. So instead of saying a noun and referring to the specific thing, you can actually use a pronoun instead. So for example, if you were talking about Jack, your friend Jack, you might say, I'm going to Jack's house, and then someone might ask why, and you could say, because Jack invited me, but it kind of sounds weird, doesn't it? Because you keep saying Jack's name, like it's just weird. So what you would say instead, if someone asks, why are you going to Jack's house? You could say, he invited me. Instead of saying, I'm going to Jack's house because Jack invited me. That's kind of weird. It does make you sound, not that there's anything wrong with people learning English, but it would kind of sound like a lot of non-native English speakers who are still learning because they're still trying to grasp the language. But of course, you would say he, and the reason for that is because he would be an acceptable pronoun to replace Jack. So obviously, when you're talking about yourself, you don't refer to yourself by name. You would substitute that noun with I. If you're talking about a group of people, for example, you could be talking about the police, or I don't know, that just popped into my head. You could refer to them as they. So pronouns basically work like nouns, but they substitute nouns instead. So there are tons more pronouns, but those are the main ones that you would need to know as a beginner. By the way, guys, I'll have links in the description to guides explaining all of this in detail if you want to go and read more about the type of word, and you're also most welcome to comment any questions down below and I'll give you a hand. Also happy to find resources for you in the language you're learning. If you can be specific and ask me for it, just comment down below. I basically, I respond to most comments if I can. So yeah, the third of the important word types is verbs. So verbs are basically action words or states of being, but they're mostly action words. So for example, running, eating, sleeping, using, having, to dream, to jump, they're all action words, and that's what verbs are. So for example, you might say, I run, she dreams, he eats, just all these other, those action words are verbs. They mean you're basically doing something. There's also the verb to be, which isn't really an action word, it's a state of being. And the to be verb basically is, you know how you say I am, he is, you are, that word is, am, are, they're actually all the same word if you think about it. It just means that, it's what you are, like it's what you're being. You could say I am being, you could say you are being stupid, or you could say you are stupid. The word, do you know, it's hard to explain, but these words, am, are, is, was, they're all the same word. It's the to be verb. It's not really an action word like the rest of them, but it's actually the most common verb. So yeah, that one's a little bit difficult to wrap your head around, but it will make sense, and yeah, guides in the description. So those are the important word types. We'll just do some practice for just the important word types, and then we'll move on to the other ones, and then we'll do a big practice at the end. So the boy kicked the soccer ball. That's our first sentence. I want you to just have a look at that and try and identify what each word type is. So is it a noun, is it a pronoun, or is it a verb? You're welcome to pause the video for the first one. We'll go through the other ones quicker. Okay, so if you haven't decided yet, I'm just going to say what it is. So in this first sentence, the boy kicked the soccer ball. The word the boy is a noun because it's referring to a person. The word kicked is a verb because to kick would be an action word, obviously. And then the soccer ball is also a noun. It's just the one that's being kicked, not the one that's doing the kicking. So we've got the boy, noun, kicked, verb, the soccer ball, noun. Now I'm going to go through the rest of them at a little bit more speed. The doctor ate the pizza. The doctor is obviously a noun because that's a person. Ate is obviously a verb because that is eating, which is an action word. And then a pizza is the noun. That is what was being eaten. A cat slept. A cat is the noun, and then slept is the verb. There's no second noun, so sometimes you'll have a person doing something to something else, and sometimes they'll just be doing something. A cat slept. It's not like a cat slept a pizza, it just slept. So that would be a verb that doesn't require another noun. Chickens saw me. So the word chickens would be a noun. So nouns can actually be singular or plural. Singular would be one person, for example, the boy or chicken, and plural is more than one, multiple. So the boys or chickens, for example, but chickens is a noun. Saw would be a verb because it's an action word. And then we have the word me. So me is obviously not a verb, but is it a noun? No, it's not. It's actually a pronoun. And the reason for that is because I haven't listed it in this list of personal pronouns here, but that's because there's a lot of different ones. If you think about it, me is kind of like I. You just kind of use it at the end of the sentence. You wouldn't say me am here. That wouldn't make sense. But you also wouldn't say give it to I. That would make you sound like a little bit of a knob. So you would say chicken saw me, and me is a pronoun because you're not going to refer to yourself by name. Like my name's Ethan. I wouldn't say chicken saw Ethan if I was referring to myself. I'd say chicken saw me. So you'd replace the person with a pronoun, in this case, me, because you're referring to yourself. You threw some hammers. So what do we think the word you is? Hopefully you got that one right. It is also a pronoun because instead of telling the person, say the person's name is Ben, you wouldn't say Ben threw some hammers if you're directly talking to Ben. That would also be kind of weird. Imagine someone's talking to you and they say your name threw some hammers. It's like, but they're talking to you. You would say you threw some hammers. So you is a pronoun because it's standing in for a noun. Threw is a verb. Verbs are pretty easy to spot. You threw some hammers, and then some hammers would be the noun. It's a plural noun. You're throwing hammers. They were losing. They is the pronoun. You guys are welcome to skip ahead to the next stage if you're understanding this, by the way. I'm just going to go through these last ones as a little bit of extra information, and you can ask me questions about any of these things if you want. They is the pronoun because you could be referring to like a sports team, for example, obviously multiple people, and you would say they were losing. So they is a pronoun, it's standing in for multiple people. Were is the verb. So this is one of those weird verbs I mentioned before. It's not really an action verb, it's the to be verb. So words like I am, you are, he is, we were, it was, that kind of second word and all of those things, they all kind of mean to be. It's what you are, and they're all verbs. You can also say will be, will have been, those are all verbs as well. So they were losing, were is the verb, and then losing is also a verb technically, because to lose would be a verb. You're doing something. Win, lose, those are verbs. So were losing is actually two verbs together. And then she has to go home. A little bit of a difficult one. She is pretty straightforward. That's obviously a pronoun. Instead of referring to the girl, whatever her name is, Anne, you would say she, if you wanted to substitute her name. Has to go. That is an interesting one. So go is obviously a verb. It's an action word. You're going somewhere. What kind of a word is has to? So has to is actually also a verb. And the reason for that is because there are some words that they're not really action words, but they are kind of verbs if you think about it. So has to is actually the verb to have to do something. So if you say, I have to do this, she has to do this, we had to do this, that word had, although have can mean like you own something, if you think about it, have can also mean like you have to do something. The verb to have to means it's basically your responsibility to do something, and that is also a verb. And then obviously home is a noun, as you'd expect, because it is a place. So yeah, that is the practice over. We'll move on to non-essential word types. So the reason I broke it into three categories is so you can kind of understand what the purpose of these words are and how important they are. We've talked about the important ones. Now we're going to talk about the non-essential ones. The reason they're non-essential is, like, all of them are, I guess, somewhat important, but understanding these isn't particularly important, and you also kind of just get the grasp of it over time. And then we'll talk about advanced word types, which are when you get better at a language, you want to add those in for a little bit more color when you're talking. So the non-essential word types, we have interjections and determiners. Interjections, super easy to understand. You won't have to rewatch this part of the video. An interjection is literally a short word that expresses emotion, like ouch, wow, damn, whoops, probably a lot of swearing as well. But yeah, that's pretty straightforward. I'm sure you understand that. Determiners are words that express specificity. Technically, determiners can kind of be a type of adjective, which is a word type we're about to talk about, but I like to keep them separate just because you kind of learn determiners fairly early on in language learning. In my opinion, I think that's a good idea, but adjectives, not so much, just because adjectives are a little bit more complicated. So determiners express specificity. The best example of a determiner are the words the and are. For example, the dog, a dog. Those are words that express what you're specifically referring to. So for example, if you say a dog, you're not referring to any specific dog. It could literally be any dog. You don't mean this specific dog. But if you said, I'm going to, for example, pat the dog, you're referring to a particular dog. It's not like you're going to go around and pat a random dog. You've got a dog in mind, and that's the dog you're going to go pat, as an example. So you can probably wrap your head around and the. Obviously, becomes an before a plural. You wouldn't say a orange. That's kind of weird. You would say an orange. And a lot of these are called articles, by the way, and they refer to things. And yeah, a lot of languages have articles. Once you go into Asian languages, a lot of them don't have articles, and Slavic languages. But yeah, European languages, a lot of them have articles. Also, the words this, that, these, those are technically determiners as well, because they're about specificity, and there's a bunch of other determiners. We won't go into all of them. I just thought I'd mention here yes and no, because they're two obviously very, very common words, and they exist in every single language because you need to have a way of saying yes or no to things. They're kind of weird words. They can be nouns, interjections, determiners, or more. They can, depending on how you use them. So yeah, don't stress too much about yes and no. They can kind of fit into a bunch of them. If anyone asks you what type of word is yes and no, the answer is it depends. And yeah, I don't want to overcomplicate this video anymore, so I just thought I'd mention that. And yeah, don't stress too much about these types of words. They aren't crucial. Apart from like the, this, that, a lot of them aren't super important, and you kind of just learn them as you go. So now we'll move on to advanced word types. I'm just getting a drink. And nobody's editing this video, so you're gonna have to wait, sorry. Anyway, ready to go. So advanced word types. These word types are ones that you wouldn't really need for putting together basic sentences, and you could probably understand the gist of what someone was saying without them. But of course, you're going to sound very clunky if you don't really know how to use any of these words. So once you've got the basics down pat, which you absolutely don't need to worry about these as a beginner, once you want to be able to read more complicated text and you want to speak in a more professional, just a better way. You want to be able to describe things and like put complicated sentences together. Yeah, you're going to have to understand these. So adjectives are basically describing words. They're probably the most common of these, and you've probably heard of adjectives before. If you haven't, that's fine. Just words that describe things. Big, fast, cold, dry, sunny, green, rough, stretchy, quiet are all examples of adjectives. Conjunctions are basically connecting words. So if you're connecting two parts of a sentence together, you would probably use a conjunction. The best example is and. So if you say, I want to go and I want to get this, you're putting two separate things together. You could say, I want to go, and then separately say, I want to get this, but you can also put them together in the one sentence with the word and. So any kind of word that puts different things together is probably a conjunction. So and, but, if, although, so are all examples of conjunctions. I want to do this, but I can't. I will buy that if you take me here. I think this, although this would be an exception. I want to be here so I can see them arrive. All examples of conjunctions. Prepositions indicate relationships between words. So what I mean by relationships, it's kind of complicated. It can be spatial, so like where something is in position to another thing. So for example, this is on top of this, or this is inside this. And they can also indicate other things as well, like who something is for, where it comes from, where it's going, that kind of thing. So examples of prepositions are to, in, of, from, for, with, among, through, and there's a bunch of other ones. So you could say, I'm going to Australia. To would be the preposition because it's showing the relationship in what's happening. You could say, I'm going to put this stick among the other sticks, and among would be the preposition because it's indicating kind of the relationship. You'll wrap your head around it as you do more of this. Adverbs are words basically that modify. Adverbs are kind of a weird one. A lot of the time, if you don't know what a word is, there's a pretty good chance it's an adverb. If I had to guess randomly, I'd probably say it was an adverb, although I can pretty much know what type of word a word is at this point. So adverbs, excuse me, adverbs modify verbs, adjectives, and other adverbs. The way I kind of think it's good to remember what adverbs do is, if you think about it, adjectives are describing words, but they only describe nouns. So you would say the big car, you know, the cold house, for example. You wouldn't say the cold running. Like that just wouldn't make sense. Adjectives exist to describe things, or they can also describe pronouns as well. You could say he is fast. So nouns, pronouns, they both have the word nouns in them. That's what adjectives describe. Adverbs are kind of like the adjectives for verbs because it has the word verb in it. So adverbs can describe verbs. They can also describe adjectives. So if you want to say, he is fast, for example, you would be using the word fast, which is an adjective to describe a noun. But if you wanted to talk about how he runs, you could say he runs quickly. Quickly would be an example of an adverb because you're describing the running. You're no longer describing the person. Of course, when you're describing a noun, you use an adjective. When you're describing a verb, you use an adverb. So you would say he was running quickly, he was yelling loudly. Those would be examples of adverbs because you're talking about what he's doing, not the actual person. You're not saying he's a quickly person, you're saying he was running quickly. So adverbs can modify verbs. They can also modify other adjectives. So if you want to say he was very fast, very is actually not an adjective, it is an adverb because think about it, what word would very be describing? If you say he is very fast, very is actually describing the word fast. It's not saying he is very. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work on its own. You're actually describing the adjective fast and kind of improving it. You're saying he was even faster than before. He was very fast. And then other words like often, so you could say he does this often. That's kind of an adverb as well. And adverbs can modify other adverbs too. So you could say extremely often would be an example, or he runs extremely quickly. Quickly, as we established before, is an adverb, and if you said extremely quickly, well, extremely would be modifying the quickly. So yeah, adverbs are kind of the most difficult to wrap your head around, but don't worry, and we're going to do some examples now. So dissection time. I've just got a quick color-coded thing up the top, and I'm going to explain all of these though, don't worry. So each color these words are in this top line are basically how I'm going to color-code each sentence. So if we take the sentence, I rarely run to the beach because my friend is very tired. Doesn't really make that much sense as a sentence, but it is grammatically correct. So I'll break it down for you. I rarely run to the beach because my friend is very tired. I is obviously a pronoun because it's substituting yourself. You're not going to refer to yourself as a name. This is kind of like a more complicated version of what we did before. Rarely would be an adverb. So I've colored it purple for adverb. The reason it's an adverb is because you're saying I rarely run. You're describing the verb. You're saying I rarely do something. It's describing a verb. So rarely is an adverb. Run obviously is a verb. We established it at the start. By the way, you're welcome to pause this video. And although I've already given you the answer, you can kind of try and figure out why each word is the way it is if you'd like. To is a preposition because it's talking about the relationship you're running to somewhere. The beach is a noun because it's a place. Because is actually a conjunction. So you might not think it, but if you say, I rarely run to the beach because my friend is very tired, it's actually connecting the two parts of the sentence. So because is a conjunction. My friend would be an example of a noun. So in the second part of the sentence, you're saying my friend is very tired and my friend is what you were talking about. So my friend is the noun because it's a person. Is a verb. If you've actually understood that by now, good job. Is obviously that to be verb that we mentioned at the start. So yeah, you're talking about a state of being. Very, adverb, because you're describing something that isn't a noun or a pronoun, you're describing an adjective. Very tired, very is an adverb. And then tired, of course, is an adjective because you're saying your friend is tired. You're describing a person, tired is the adjective. I will note, by the way, the word the, I've colored it red in the noun, but technically, if you notice this, good on you, the is actually a determiner, as we talked about before, because you're saying the beach, not a beach. But I've just colored the whole thing red for simplicity because the beach is a noun. But yeah, if you did notice that, good on you. And you don't get points for noticing the dog because I just pointed that out with the beach. So, but yeah, good on you. So second sentence for practice, the dog thought it could chase the car and was terribly wrong. Again, bit of a silly sentence, but it's just a long sentence so I can kind of get a bunch of different words. So the dog, obviously a noun, it is a thing. Thought is obviously a verb because it's a thinking word. It is a pronoun because you could say the dog thought the dog could chase, but that's kind of wouldn't really make sense. You would say the dog thought it could chase. So it is a pronoun because it's taking the place of this word. Could chase is a verb. So chase is obviously a verb because it's a doing word. Could is kind of an interesting verb. The verb is can basically. So I can, he can, we could would be in the past tense. We will be able to is in the future tense. It kind of changes a little bit weirdly. But yeah, could is a verb. After would be a preposition because it's indicating relationship. The car, again, is another noun because it's a thing. And obviously conjunction. You probably got that right. It's the most common conjunction. Was is a verb. It's that being verb we talked about before in the past tense. Terribly is an adjective. It's an adverb, because it's describing an adjective, and wrong is the adjective because the dog, it's talking about the dog. The dog was terribly wrong that it thought it could chase a car. The dog was wrong. Wrong is an adjective. Right, wrong. They're ways of describing things. And then terribly wrong is kind of changing the adjective to make it a little bit worse. But yeah, that is the dissection. Bottom line, guys, understanding these word types is super useful. Don't stress it if it is a little bit difficult. But yeah, once you can have a good understanding of this, you will find language learning way easier. But yeah, hit the subscribe button. Definitely comment any questions down below. Links to my website and Discord and description with further reading as well about these words if you'd like to have it. And yeah, have a good one.